Hello? So thank you very much, Ismael. Now we are going to listen to Francisco García Morán. He holds a degree in mathematics from the University of Seville and a degree in computer science from the Polytechnic University of Madrid. He is the Chief Informational Technology Advisor at the European Union, and he's going to explain us the European skill gap that there is in the telecenters field. So let's receive Francisco with a big applause.
Buenos días. ¿Qué tal Granada por la noche?
Good morning. Well, how was Granada at night? I had to stay in bed because I ate something that wasn't very good for my stomach. Well, let's see if I manage to keep you awake in the next 15 minutes. The presentation is in English, but I will talk with pure Sevillian accent. My wife comes from Granada, so I have all the good qualities. Okay, so we have stated that we have a deficit in skills. How do we know? Well, I can't even use the pointer properly. Well, here we are going to compare the European Union, the United States, Japan and Canada. And in inclusion, we have very good results. But in digital literacy, comparing with Canada or Japan or the United States, the results are a bit worse. We have seen that there are three sectors in which the European Union thinks that there will be employment. One is the green sector, the other one is the sector of health, and of course also the sector of ICTs. Why is that? Because ICTs are a facilitator for other types of business. The most advanced countries are those that are the better users of ICTs, because they represent 25% of the increase of productivity in the last 20 years. These are average numbers for the European Union. In some conferences where I've been presenting these data about employment in the sector of ICTs, people that were in the audience said, I'm not one of those 400,000 people, and that was true, but these are average numbers. We have to promote mobility because these workers are needed in this sector, but maybe not in the country where you are. These are statistics from the month of February from the EURES portal. There are more than 200,000 demands of jobs in the ICT sector, and there are about 400,000 people who are going to abandon this sector in a short time. Programmers there's also a shortage of programmers in banks. I started working, I will maybe start working as a programmer if this goes on like this. There is in the European Union a deficit of 1 million jobs in this sector. The image of the nerds, as they call them in the United States, of someone who is in a garage playing with his computer, programming and making applications, well, the reality is quite different, because many of these nerds are going to retire in brief, and I know that for sure because I've just come back from Silicon Valley. The reality is also that we have few women in this sector. Why is that? Maybe because of this image of crazy people who are playing with their computer and their joystick all day long. Although this image is receding in the environment of ICTs. I gave a conference in Russia a month ago, and I can tell you that there the situation is very different. Half of the 8,000 people in the audience were women. That was something very impressive. I think that we will have to find out why women are starting to work in ICTs much more there than here. Obviously, if they don't even study informatics, then they will not be able to work in this sector. Thirdly, we have computer specialists in this sector, but there is something very interesting in Europe, which is that 80% of jobs in the computing sector in Europe are in the service sector. This is a personal comment, a bit critical about what we have done in Europe. And this is something in which I have taken part. Where is the European industry of computing? How many companies can we mention nowadays which are competitive, which can compete with the great American, Japanese, or Chinese companies that can compete with Amazon, Google, eBay, Oracle, Microsoft, etc. When you talk with the people of the sector, you always think of one big company, which is a global player. So we wonder, after having invested in research in Europe in the last 20 years, how is it possible that we only have 20% in state-of-the-art sector, in this state-of-the-art sector? This is something that we have to solve in the New Horizon 2020 program. In the European Union, research and development has been increased in 14%, so it's really now or never. I already told you before, computing and communication is absolutely essential for all sectors of society, be it the social aspect, technological, or business aspect. We have to find computing specialists. Do you know how many university degree holders there are in Spain every year coming out of Spanish universities? At the most, we have tens of thousands. In the USA, there are about several hundred thousand, and when I visited China, I realized that they are going to eat us, they are going to gobble us up. The only choice we have is if they're going to eat us with rice or with vegetables, but they will, because they have more than 1 million graduates coming out of the computing schools every year. There is a lot to do in this branch, and we won't be able to do anything if we don't train all workers to be able to use computers to increase our productivity and our competitivity, and if we don't train people in computing. A part of the European digital agenda, a part of the Agenda 2020, which is the big umbrella that we are using, we have to increase the access of Internet. 75% for the year 2015 have to access Internet regularly. Those who are at a disadvantage have to be, the quantity has to be increased in those populations by 40%. And we have to reduce the number of people who have never had access to Internet. These are the numbers per country in the European Union. And to achieve this objective, well, at the beginning of the conference, we saw a video of the commissioner who is responsible for the digital agenda, Neelie Kroes, and together with the Commissioner for Employment, for Education and Culture, has created this big coalition, has launched this big coalition. But this is something that can not only be done in Brussels. Brussels is not the European Union. I live in Luxembourg, and I work there. I go to Brussels occasionally, but there are research centers in many countries, and we have embassies all over the world. So when they tell you this comes from Brussels, geographically it's not exactly true. And secondly, the legal base for all of these initiatives is a legal base that is shared between the European Union and the European countries, the members of the European Union, the governments. And all of this together creates leverage. But the reality is that most of the policies have to be then applied in the member states. And last but not least, we want to give publicity to all of this, and that is why the Digital Agenda of Europe foresees a yearly meeting, and telecenters have a very important role to play there. This year it is taking place in Dublin because we are now under the Irish presidency of the European Union. Well, this is a very complex problem, and digital skills have a lot to do with learning, with employment, with mobility, and also with the acquisition of skills. What is important is that we are all conscious of the fact that everyone who intervenes in the different sectors has to work together so that we can cover this gap that we have detected in Europe. And to attain this, we have 5 lines of action in the European Union. Training, first of all, but everyone has to participate: civil society, university, companies, the market. This is not something that we can do approving communications or directives. Many of the directives take a long time to be applied in the member states. Nowadays we have a lack of imbalance between the demand and the offer, geographically speaking. So that is why one of the main factors is our linguistical skills. There is an Andalusian federation of companies, of computing businesses, and they've talked to me often saying, how can we create business in Brussels for our companies? And the lady that they have chosen for this to talk about this subject has written to me yesterday saying that they want to create a consortium and that they have taken up contact with some companies in Brussels, and they all say, okay, but the people who want to come to work in our teams have to speak other languages. And unfortunately, this is what is lacking here. On the other hand, there's also the question of certification. If we don't have an homogeneous certification which is recognized in the whole of the European Union, we won't have a single European labor market, and everyone has to work in this center, in this sense, and telecenters are essential in this to achieve this goal. If we are not conscious of the problem, we won't be able to solve it, obviously. And this conference has opened my eyes to many things. I have come to very important conclusions, and this has to start at schools, obviously. Computing has to be introduced into school curricula. Teachers have to be trained so that they don't think that they have computing in their class just because they have a PC there. And we have to, of course, use the capabilities of the networks, of the web, so that people can learn through it. You also know Steve Jobs, obviously, the boss of Apple. If he hadn't died, his next objective was to go into the field of education, and tablets were considered by him as an instrument for the introduction of a more dynamic way of learning. How can telecenters cooperate with the European Union through their programs? I had a conversation with Gabriel Risola and with Miguel González Sancho from the DG Connect of the European Commission, and we have identified well, all these DG, we have identified those DGs that could cooperate in the framework of the financial framework up to 2020 in education and culture through the programs of lifelong learning. I've also talked about research previously, and obviously everything that is competence, which is the competence of the DG enterprise, and of course in the field of employment, and of course also in the field of digital literacy. And I think that in the next financial framework there are great possibilities for telecentres to obtain financing to increase their cooperation with the European Union. Of course, all programs that have to do with youth also can participate in this. This morning, I was reading the newspaper to see what the temperature was going to be, and this is what I saw. It is our last. Is it our last opportunity? Well, I think that we have to fight to solve this problem of youth unemployment, which was the main subject in the newspapers. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to finish talking about something very personal. I got in touch with telecentres some time ago. I was working in the regional government of Andalusia before I went to work in Brussels 27 years ago. So I know the project of Guadalinfo quite a bit. But in Brussels, at a dinner with Juan Francisco, who is the king, I call him the king of dynamite and not of dynamization or not of facilitation. Well, we had a conversation and I decided to do something. When I retire, and I have only 3 years, 11 months and 12 days to go for retirement, I will also participate in this initiative. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Francisco.